Sony ImageWorks has traditionally been a visual effects house, which means that we are a work-for-hire visual effects company. We work for filmmakers who hopefully want to put big, exciting effects in their movies. Currently, we're moving more towards content creation and trying to grow our own content development division, and we've started a new animation division. We used Maya for just about everything that we could, mostly because it's so stable and it's such a reliable product. And also, frankly, because it makes it easier for us to recruit artists. It's one of those products that it's almost impossible to find somebody who's a modeler, who's a lighter, who's done animation, who doesn't use Maya.
Well, I think everybody on the planet actually wants to work on Spider-Man. I think it's one of the coolest projects that you could possibly want to work on. Doc Ock is one of the most complicated characters we did. When we saw the costume the first day, we were like, oh my god, how are we going to achieve this? The main reason behind this is we had layers and layers of cloth on top of each other that, once again, on top of all of those difficulties, needed to interact with the tentacles, because the tentacles were sticking out straight through the costume. They also needed to interact with the costume and influence the costume as Doc Ock moved around.
My role on Spider-Man 2 was cloth lead. I was responsible for tailoring and overseeing the costumes for 5 characters on Spider-Man 2, being Doc Ock, Aunt May, Mary Jane, Stunt Woman, and Stuntman that were thrown from a train. We had some crazy motion where he's fighting with Spider-Man on top of the train. We actually couldn't simulate that, so we ended up making a rig of it, of the costume, and animating it by hand, which worked out really nice.
We use Mel here extensively. We almost don't hire any people who don't know Mel anymore. Everything that we build and everything that we create ultimately gets converted into a Mel script and therefore becomes an asset that can be used again. We found out that the stunt person performing most of the stunts was going to be the exact same person. We decided to also reuse Spider-Man almost completely. There were changes in the costume and there were texture painting changes, but the physique and the overall character muscle anatomy did not change whatsoever, so we were able to use the entire character again. In the movie, Doc Ock reaches very, very far with his tentacles, and we often needed to insert new vertebrae into his tentacles as we went along. We had things like, we had a shockwave that could go through the tentacles that was Mel scripted, that our animators could just turn on. Whenever the tentacles impacted on the floor or on the walls, we needed to visibly see that the whole mass kind of vibrated, so we had dynamic controls for that. So we had a lot of different ways of kind of making these tentacles come alive.
This business, you're always on a really tight time frame. Spider-Man was a success that it was, go get the next one out in the theaters. And we didn't have time to look at things like developing new tools, writing our own code. We had to go with the products that we knew we could use and we knew would be there and be reliable for us. And Maya was definitely that software.
Well, in Spider-Man 2, we worked closely with the Alias Custom Development Center on bringing the object cloth up to par with the panel cloth, being that there were a number of constraints missing, and we had some specific requirements we needed to be implemented in for us to tackle this movie.
We would talk to them at least once a week, and we would say, okay, this is where we're having problems, this is where we need additional control, this is an area where we need to have pinning controls to pin the costume down, and we also needed to be able to use that costume in many unconventional ways, and that's once again where the CDC came up with new solutions on how to make that work.
The guys were extremely quick in getting back to us. In fact, it would be within hours. And then when they discovered the problem, it would be maybe a day or two for them to turn around a solution for us.
There were so many features that were in the latest release of some of the Maya products that we used that were features that we didn't even know were coming, and so it allowed us to really focus on trying to integrate our characters and get our look developed for the director and not have to worry about software and not have to worry about bugs and have to worry about technical upgrades because it was all already there for us.
Character tools, its open-endedness, work we did with the Custom Development Center, all helped push this movie through, and I don't believe we could have done this show without Maya.
Maya is such a tried and true product, and there's been so much time and development put into it, and it's so stable at this point that having that kind of solid backbone to the work that you're doing just makes it easier. It gives us the ability to focus on the creative content and not have to worry about the technical aspects of it.